Thursday, April 30th, and our reading lesson today is a new story. It's short, and it is titled Up in the Air. So I want you to think for just a moment, what might that be about, up in the air? You hear the word air, so you know it's going to be outside. Wonder what it might be about. Think of Old Woman, Old Woman. It's a little similar to that. All right, and I'm going to go ahead now and bring it up for you to take a look at it. Looks like this, up in the air. So look at what you see on the front cover. Ask yourself, is this a real story? Could it be real? Are these real photos or not? If you guess that they're real photos, that is correct. What do you see on this page? I see a lot of hot air balloons. A hot air balloon, like in Old Woman, is a balloon that goes up in the sky that you can ride in. You can ride in a basket. So there's a lot of colors on this page, boys and girls. We know that this is a real story, that it is real because of the photos that we see, but it is not a story. It is an informational text. So we're going to go ahead now, and I'm going to have you listen to the story.
Up in the air.
Imagine drifting high above the ground. There's nothing but sky around you. You're standing in a small basket under a giant balloon and a roaring fire. The balloon is as colorful as a box of crayons. How did you get up so high? More important, how will you get down?
Every year, hundreds of people climb aboard hot air balloons at the Balloon Fiesta in New Mexico.
Going up and going down is easy. Heat makes air light. If the balloon has hot air, it rises. Then with cool, heavier air, it sinks. There's no way to steer the balloon from side to side. So don't try to get anywhere. Just drift with the wind and enjoy the ride.
The pilot controls the fire to make the air inside the balloon hotter or cooler. That causes the balloon to rise or fall.
All right, so we learned a lot of information on this page. Okay, I'm going to turn it to the next one, but oops, I didn't think there was another page. I wanted to double check. Okay, because I don't have the big book in front of me. All right, so this talked about a lot of different things about a balloon, and mostly how it works, how it goes up, how it goes down. It has something to do with the temperature, doesn't it? Whether it is hotter or cooler. So we're going to just look at some of the details first before we go on to our next lesson. So it says you are standing in a small basket under a giant balloon and a roaring fire. That's very important, boys and girls, the roaring fire. Because without the fire, the hot air balloon is not going to go anywhere. So the heat goes up into the balloon, which causes the balloon to go up. Remember, it says going up and down. Heat makes the air lighter. If the balloon has hot air, it rises. So right here, I'm going to underline that's our first detail to focus on. Hot air rises. So that's number one, and I can write right here on our book. Then it says, then with cool, heavier air, it sinks. So cool, heavier air, it would sink. So it's all has to do with adjusting the heat higher or lower, like on a stove when you have a flame. If your mom or dad turns up a flame on a stove, it's going to be hotter, causing the water to boil faster or food to cook faster. When you turn it down, it is going to be not as hot, and so the food will take longer to boil or cook. So the next part is going to be talking about the relationship, the cause and effect relationship. If I blow up a balloon, just a regular balloon like at a party, if I blow up a balloon until it is full and then let out the air out of the balloon, what's going to happen to the balloon? If I let the air out, you might hear that funny sound, but the balloon is going to get smaller. If I let out the air, it's going to get smaller. Let's take a look now at our chart. So we have a cause and effect. So looking at what we just were talking about with the balloon, we have hot air is light. So it makes the balloon rise. So what causes the balloon to rise? The hot air is lighter. Cold air is actually heavier than the hot air, and so the balloon sinks. So hot air causes a balloon to rise. Cooler air causes a balloon to sink. So this is our hot and cold relationship. So we talked about what the pilot does. The pilot is adjusting the flame over here. The pilot controls the fire to make the air inside the balloon hotter or cooler. The pilot controls the fire. That causes the balloon to rise or fall. So if we look at our chart, the pilot turns on the fire, so the balloon fills with hot air and rises. If the pilot turns off the fire, turns it off completely, now it's going to cool down. The air in the balloon cools and the balloon will fall. So the biggest thing for you to remember is the hot air causes the balloon to rise, cool air causes it to sink. The pilot is like a pilot in a plane, is the one who controls whether or not it's going to go up or down. So that is basically the end of our cause and effect relationship of our story. Okay? So using if and then. If the pilot turns a flame up, the balloon will go up. It'll rise. If the pilot turns it down or off, then it will cause the balloon to go down. The next part of our lesson today is going to be on vocabulary, relating adjectives or words that describe to their opposites. Okay, so we have talked about opposites before. We're going to review a couple of those now. So think about opposites. Think about what you know about opposites. What's the opposite of up? Down. What's the opposite of dark? Light. What's the opposite of hot? Cold. What's the opposite of in? Out. When I read that the hot air makes the balloon rise, then I think about what this means. I think about the opposite of the words. If hot air is light, means it's not as heavy. Is cold air heavy? Hot and cold are opposites. Light and heavy are opposites. I keep reading. The author explains that cool air, right here, cool air is heavier than hot air. So cool air makes the balloon sink. Cool is not the opposite of hot. But now I know that cold air is heavier. Cool is not the opposite of hot. cold is. So cool is not the opposite, but now we know that cold air is heavier than light air. So thinking about the opposites helps us to better understand what's happening here. One more time. Hot air rises. Repeat after me. Hot air rises. Or I should say, hot air causes the balloon to rise. Hot air causes the balloon to rise. Cool air causes the balloon to sink. Cool air causes it to sink. So, again, looking at our opposites. What's the opposite of rise? Would be sink. And some other opposite words. What's the opposite of easy? Hard. And you can probably even think of a few more opposites. If you want, you can say them out loud now, or again, you can always write them down, or even write them down on just a whiteboard. We have one final lesson that we're going to do today, friends, and that is focusing on our captions and our labels. Boy, we have everything in this informational text today, it seems like. If we look down here, what is this? If you guessed a caption, that is correct. What about over here? What is this? It is also a caption. And whenever we have captions, we usually have something else. Do you remember what that is? Take a look up here. There's a bunch of little words around this balloon. If you guessed labels, that is correct. Going back to our captions. When I read the caption, I understand that the photo shows the balloon fiesta down here in New Mexico. There are so many colorful balloons. Most of them are on the ground, just starting to fill with hot air. I also see a map of the United States right here. I see one green state on the map. That is New Mexico, boys and girls. The author included the map so that I would know where the balloon fiesta takes place. Every year, hundreds of people climb aboard a hot air balloon at the balloon fiesta in New Mexico. So the map shows us where this event is taking place. So if you have a chance to go to New Mexico during their fiesta, you might see a hot air balloon party. That's what I would call it, or a festival, because there sure is a lot of them. And over here, underneath this balloon, we see another caption. And that caption identifies for us what's taking place up here and who the pilot is. The pilot controls the fire to make the air inside the balloon hotter or cooler. And that causes the balloon to rise and fall. So again, our captions identify what? They identify what's happening in our photos. And these are real photos of real balloons. This one is just an illustration, but the caption still is identifying and explaining what's happening here and why it's written. It's telling us about who the pilot is and how the pilot controls the balloon. And all of these are the labels that identify what the different parts of the balloon are. And that concludes our story today of Up in the Air. I hope you learned something about hot air balloons and enjoyed learning how hot air balloons work. And maybe one day you'll have a chance to go up in a hot air balloon yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, boys and girls.